Hi, and welcome to North and Chick, a podcast about food, community, and well-being.
I'm Hayley North. I work as a holistic chef, food educator, yoga and movement teacher.
And I'm Kirsten Chick, nutritional therapist, writer, and author.
Together, we're passionate about nourishing our community with food, nutrition, movement, and in many other ways.
In our work and personal lives, we meet so many inspiring people doing incredible work for their community. So we have a wonderful lineup of guests for you. We'll be sharing our conversations alongside recipes, nutrition tips, and general life tips.
We'd love your feedback, so please get in touch via our social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter as North and Chick. You can follow us there and also subscribe to our podcast to get an alert each time we release a new episode.
So, Hayley, we've known each other a very long time. It's got to be at least 15 years, hasn't it?
15 years or more, for sure. I can't quite remember.
I do remember, though, very clearly going to one of your amazing yoga classes and chatting to you at the end of it. And then we were both walking in the same direction. And then it turns out that we were next door neighbours. So we started up a friendship. We started doing yoga nutrition swaps. You were very much getting interested in the whole cooking and holistic and food side of things. In fact, were you already working in that area at the time?
Yeah, that's right. I'd just finished my yoga teacher training and was managing a holistic health centre, a cafe within a holistic health centre, and that's where we met. And I was also doing yoga classes there. And meeting you was pivotal in my own journey. And what I've learned about nutrition through you and through working with you has been pivotal in my personal growth and in my work.
Wow. Well, that's something that we've always kind of given to each other and met each other. So as we've developed what we're doing, and we've worked together so much, haven't we? We've done we did a whole series of workshops together in the early days. They evolved into retreats in various different countries and locations. And every time we meet up, we've both kind of journeyed, explored, processed, progressed, and meet at a really great place where we're at the same level but also have so much to give each other again.
Yeah, exactly. It's always a kind of a mutual respect for each other's journey, I think, and very much a shared learning in how we go about what we do.
Yes, so I'm so happy now that the universe has invented the format of the podcast so that we can continue working together at the moment, because I've really missed working with you. But tell me briefly what you've been up to in the past year or so.
Yeah, so really since March 2020, with the change to our lives that everybody's aware of, my work all went online, and I've been busy transitioning and seeing what I can create for myself and along with the Holistic Kitchen Academy. And we've developed numerous courses, and I've been offering numerous classes, and particularly the Qigong classes that I've been running twice a week. They've been going since the very, very first lockdown, and we have some of the same people. The majority of people actually have been there since the start of that journey, and it's really developed into a lovely community with people from all over the world practicing together twice a week. So yes, Kirsten, how's it been for the last year for you? How has your work changed?
So really, my work hasn't changed massively, except that I've brought out a book that I'm immensely proud of and is working its way through various networks.
Finally.
I know, 5 years in the writing. It's called Nutrition Brought to Life, but we'll talk about that another time. Well, then it's all gone online. So I'm still offering one-to-one consultations. I've always offered those online anyway, because I've worked with people around the country and overseas, so people can still do that. But all my workshops, my courses have gone online. Even teaching my uni students has been at varying times online and is at the moment, which presents its own challenges, but it also opens things up as well. So we were talking earlier, you and I, about how working online can really open up communities. So this is a theme that keeps coming up in our conversations, isn't it? It's these communities that that kind of gather around these places where there is nourishment being offered. So we have people who end up nourishing their communities, like you are.
At grassroots level, kind of making links, making connections, instigating change and offering nourishment back to their communities. And they're the people that we want to showcase through this podcast series.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got our first guest.
Susie Cunningham from London in the UK is our first guest. She's a young woman that Kirsten and I met on a workshop that we were both co-teaching probably around 10 years ago now. Since then, Susie has participated in trainings with myself and the team at Holistic Kitchen Academy. And we've always been inspired by what Susie's up to, you know, what she does and her approach, particularly to working with at-risk youth.
Yeah, so she really is at the heart of what we both embody, really. So she's at the heart of the community and she's working with food. So I'm obviously a nutritional therapist and a complete foodie. You're a holistic chef. That's something that is at the heart of nourishment, really. And she's taking that and working with young people with food. So you don't get much more nourishing your community than that.
So we are very excited to welcome Susie Cunningham from London, a therapeutic wellbeing practitioner working with children and young people from disadvantaged backgrounds in inner city London. Susie has worked within the charity sector for many years, including projects overseas in India and Spain. She's also worked with Kids Company from 2011 to 2015. Here, Susie started out as a key worker and saw an opportunity to get involved with the food and cooking side, where things literally flourished from there. She instigated change in how cooking was approached and taught, bringing her therapeutic approach to the programs. She ended up creating 5 after-school clubs per week, a Friday night teenagers group, a mums group, and a baking group. Susie then went on to train at the Institute of Art Therapy and Education and has centred her therapeutic work with young people around her love and passion for food. Susie also founded a network of wellbeing practitioners who all work with at-risk children through therapeutic mediums called the Flourish Kitchen. Here she combines the roots and principles of integrative art, psychotherapy and youth work with food education.
So, Susie, a core value of the Flourish Kitchen is that every child has a natural curiosity in cooking. So can you talk to us more about this and what you do at the Flourish Kitchen?
Yes, yeah, of course. So for me, when I think about children having a natural curiosity in cooking, I suppose I'm really talking about the playful aspect of cooking. And I think with the Flourish Kitchen really is tapping into the play that happens when children are in a kitchen. And interestingly, I wrote, that comes from my website, what you're referring to. I wrote that pre-becoming a mother, and I now have a 3.5-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And I can really, really see from when I'm cooking with her that it is play that's happening. And I suppose for children, play and work are inseparable. They learn through play. So Flourish Kitchen is really about tapping into the very natural, sensorial, bodily way that we cook. So where possible, we really like to use our fingers. We really like to encourage children to get stuck in to the cooking process and to really give space and time to tap into the playful part of cooking. And even when we're cooking with adults and older children, we try and come back to the childlike approach to cooking, the kind of joyful, pure aspect that we maybe can all tap into the way we may have cooked with our parents, or for me with my grannies. The simple licking of the spoon, they're like tasting as you go, experimenting, making a mess. Flourish Kitchen, in a nutshell, is a therapeutic approach to engaging with cooking.
Brilliant. And I can see how that works really well with adults as well as children. I still lick the spoon and encourage people to get, really taste what they're cooking along the way as well when I'm working with people. Back to children, how can working with food really enhance the child's life? Most importantly, their mental and emotional well-being.
Yeah, well, that's a great question, because for me, what we see in the kitchen is that the outcomes that we see, and actually the outcomes that we're interested in, aren't so much the skills-based usual outcomes of cooking, even though that's there, because we are still cooking, we are still learning skills, but the outcomes that we see in the children are their soft skills. So that what we look for and what we're marking and developing is their self-esteem. So seeing children feel confident about themselves when in the kitchen, whether it is simply grating a block of cheese. There's a lot of talk in the Forest School approach about small meaningful tasks. So that's for the self-esteem, and then the social skills. So for a lot of the children that we get referred to, social skills is one of the areas that either the Senko or the teacher, depending on who's on the referral, wants us to support them with. So cooking is so perfect for social skill development, because we do a lot of taking turns. If we're making a cake, everyone has a stir, you pass it around. So the kind of collective accountability for things in order for the flow of the cooking to work. You have to all chip in. But with everything in Flourish Kitchen, it's very much we don't tell the children you must share it. It very much happens when you're in small groups and you are cooking a meal together. And it's quite a magical part of the session, actually, is how much of what we do is by just the kind of togetherness of cooking. It's quite amazing, actually, the children who get referred. So often what we see in the classroom doesn't match the child who's been described in the referral form.
Oh, what, because the environment's so different for them that you're setting up?
Yeah. So I think for a lot of children who struggle in the classroom, so when we're getting referrals from teachers, one of the main thing that they struggle with is children who are not able to sit still. I think for a lot of children, especially who have early attachment difficulties, or learning difficulties like ADHD, sitting in the classroom is really difficult, and they need to be in their bodies. Mm-hmm. So in the Flourish Kitchen, in our cooking groups, we try to get into the doing part of the cooking quite as quickly as we can once we've kind of set the space and done our check-in and explain what we're going to cook today. It's really important that we get into the doing very quickly, because the children who are emotionally dysregulated and have quite high energy need to really be grounded and then in their bodies. So because of the environment that we're creating, we don't see the same behaviour that the teachers will experience in the classroom. So that's what's so amazing, is being able to feed that back to the teachers, and then in some instances they are able to see the change in the children through being in our groups.
Yeah, so you're not just saying that they can change their behaviour when they're in a different environment, but then they can take that back to other environments and stay as focused.
I suppose there's one boy that springs to mind, is I won't mention his name, but a boy who was actually one of my first referrals when Flourish, when I started doing Flourish Kitchen, so outside of charity sector, but doing it for myself in schools. There's one boy who was referred because he was really struggled to stay at the table and would often throw objects and want to run out of the class. And then sometimes he would also hide under the desk. And his feedback was amazing. The teacher said that he actually came and did 2 6 weeks with us. So it's quite a long intervention. So once a week for 6 weeks, twice, so 12 weeks in total. And the teacher on her feedback afterwards said that he was, as a result of the cooking club, able to stay seated at his desk for longer, and that she hadn't seen him hiding under the desk at all since doing a group. I mean, I'm sure that would have now regressed a bit, but I think what's important is that if children have continuous experiences like this, if they get a chance to see themselves differently and get to be in their bodies, get to be physical, then I don't think the behaviour that they'd see in the classroom would remain the same, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely, it makes sense. So they've got a different perception of who they can be. Perhaps their teachers have got a different perception of who they can be as well. And everything's got to unfold from there, really, hasn't it?
Exactly, yeah.
One thing I did want to ask you about, Susie, well, we both did, and I didn't know how to tactfully weave it in, was about some of the challenges that you faced, like working with kids in the kitchen with like knives and graters and fire and all of that being around. And of course, I don't know how to best put that out there, because it's not to insinuate that all the children that you work with are, potentially violent. But
no, it's a great question, because that's where I can't remember if I mentioned, but I'm forest school trained, which has really equipped me with confidence using knives. So forest school ethos is very much about safe risk taking. So they are all about getting children using knives, being around flames, and empowering them to make safe to take safe risks. So with the children, once we've taught them basic knife skills, so the claw and the crab technique, which is like a approach to how to hold a knife for children. And once they've done that, we allow them to use a knife. As long as there's an adult next to them, we allow them to use a knife. And I think that's one of the really therapeutic parts of the cooking, is that we're saying we trust you to use a knife. I mean, these are kids where knives in their community can symbolise something very different, but we're saying we trust you. And it's another reason why we keep the groups small. We never have more than 4 in a group, and there's 2 adults to 4 children.
That sense of trust that you're giving to the children must be so life-changing for some of them, whether you're working on projects within schools or outside of schools. Really important. Back to in schools. So why is food education actually within schools so important for you?
For me, I suppose the way I would want to answer that would be, I suppose, my core values, and from what I see in the kitchen, that it's really about creating cultures around food. So my experience is that when in cooking clubs, or when I'm doing one-to-one mentoring with children in cooking, it's really my approach is not so much the emphasis on what we're cooking. It's about how we cook and the language that we use when we're cooking. They're really just kind of creating an energy, and that once we can do that, when we can get children excited and feel like they can be part of cooking and they can have that autonomy over what they eat, then healthy food approaches can happen. So I feel like the entry in to making changes with children and the approach to eating and cooking has to be to get them in the kitchen. I don't feel like, particularly the children that we work with, I don't feel like a new like a food economic, more scientific approach to cooking works. They've already got a lot on their plate and it just feels like another thing. Whereas if you can get them in the kitchen, get them involved, get them in their bodies, get them excited, just have those conversations, and all the rest can unfold. So my I would say in terms of food education in school is just get kids cooking, and it doesn't matter what you're cooking. Like it's just get them in the kitchen.
Get them cooking something, get them nourishing themselves in some way and communicating with each other in some way.
Yeah.
And I like how you talk about cultures around food as well. And I know that you get parents involved a lot. So tell me a little bit more about getting parents on board, whether it's in the same classes or separate classes. How do you go about this, and why is this so important?
Yeah. The cooking with parents does have a kind of different approach in terms of, I would say, in terms of the outcomes are still about the soft skills, the communication skills, the belonging, the self-esteem, confidence, resilience, but it is also about the food in a way that, for me, I've noticed that it's kind of more so than it is with the children, because with particularly communities that we work with in the Brixton and South London area, there's a real rich kind of cultural mix. What am I trying to say? There's a nice cultural mix of different mums who would access our groups, and they all knew how to cook. So cooking was the vehicle to bring the mums together. So the food really was in some ways important, because it was how they were able to communicate something about themselves and where they came from. So for the parents, it was and is much more about about empowering them to share their recipes. And actually we did one of a really amazing program. It's a program called The Recipe of Life. Don't know if you two know about the Recipe of Life program. It's a narrative therapy approach where you collectively create a metaphorical recipe together. Basically it's a cookbook that you all work on together, and each recipe in the book is an individual recipe. So each mum will share a recipe from her culture, but it has to be a recipe that means something to her. And then at the end, so you work through this program. So if you had 6 mums, you'd have 6 recipes, one from each person. And then at the end, you make a collective recipe, and that becomes a metaphorical recipe. So a recipe based on what's come up through the sharing of the other recipes. For example, you could have a recipe for belonging, and then together you create a cup of a cup of honesty, a cup of a stir of diversity, sprinkling of this, sprinkling of that, and all led by them. But it's a lovely mixture of using your personal recipes, and then a recipe collectively for life that you've learned together through sharing. I don't know if I'm explaining it.
Yeah, no, I didn't know. I get a clear picture of that. And that just sounds like a wonderful thing for their community, their collectivity, their expression and creativity, confidence, all of those things. And that must surely then go back and have an impact on the children as well, and their life experience.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's going back to that, creating a culture around food. If a mum or dad or whoever's looking after the child, if they're feeling that they are confident in whatever they're expressing in the kitchen or creating and sharing, then if they can feel it from themselves, and the children are going to be able to tap into that culture that's created by the mum. And then if you can work together, if you can work with the mum and the child, then that's where you can see really transformational spaces
Brilliant.
form.
I love all of this. I think every community should have Flourish kitchens and recipe for life projects.
But that's what's so amazing is that, because I'm definitely not a brilliant cook by any means. I'm very, very passionate about food. I could talk about food all day long, but it's the eating part for me that I feel like is the bit that perhaps more my skill is the eating. I am confident enough at cooking, but it really is just enough bit that I want to stress that anybody can run groups like I do if you realize that it's about the process, not so much the outcome. The outcome is important, but it's the process that gets people hooked and into cooking.
Do you have, because food is about the process, it's about the experience, and food can evoke such strong memories as well and be connected to so many memories. So do you have a strong food memory from your childhood, perhaps, that you feel has inspired you on your journey that you'd like to share with us?
So I'm torn whether to share. So my memories, I think, are cooking with my grannies, and I feel like both my memories from my grannies kind of form the Flourish Kitchen ethos in a way, because one granny was a very more like loving, nurturing granny who I would make granny biscuits with, and a thing called Fat Rascals, which are little like potato and onion, like potato cakes really. But I have such a strong, lovely, comforting memory of having that one-to-one attention with her. I'm from a family of 5 children, so I didn't get so much. It wasn't an opportunity to have like one-to-one adult time. But cooking with my granny was so what's the word? Just feels so like just very nurturing, and felt very special that to be doing that with her and her recipe. And then the other granny, she was a real like matriarch and would cook these big meals. And my memory is the feeling that I would have when it would be ready, time to eat, and everybody going to get various things from the fridge or what's being laid out ready to go on the table. So the memory is kind of the energy of eating together and the excitement of cooking. And I think, so those 2 memories from my different grannies, I think the nurturing and love from one, and then the energy of a shared meal from the other.
Brilliant. I kind of have similar granny memories too, and it really just makes you feel really warm, and like you've got some kind of a really strong kind of history of nourishment behind you, doesn't it?
Yeah, there's something about the granny relationship, isn't there, where they've got a bit more of a license to be fun and creative and all about you. I think that maybe parents don't really have the time to, or like it's a different investment, I think, a granny
you're
child.
Right. Oh, that's interesting, isn't it? These different kind of food communities that we, and different relationships that we'd have with different people, and how food can generate that. Anyway, over to Hayley, because I don't want to completely hog you. I know Hayley's got some questions for you too.
Thanks, Kirsten.
Oh, thank you. It's so lovely listening to you talk and share this, Susie. It's so inspiring for me, what you just mentioned, that it's not about the outcome, that it's about the process, and how you use cooking as the medium for this therapeutic work. It's very powerful. Yeah, really powerful. So what inspired you to start your own project, the Flourish Kitchen?
Well, the children, I suppose, inspired me through working in the charity sector and working with children who had been, for various reasons, had been excluded from either from school or from socially excluded. And what I saw was when I felt I was able to engage and connect with the children when in cooking club with them, that when the charity that I was working for closed down, I just felt that I had to set up the Flourish Kitchen, because it was for me the way that it was my vehicle into communicating with children.
So after Kids Company closed, you realized there was kind of an empty void there, if you like, that this service was needed, like really needed. And so you carried it on, basically. You created the Flourish Kitchen to keep that going.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there was a bit of information, well, a quote I saw on the Young Minds site that said 1 in 4 children are not receiving the appropriate intervention for their mental health difficulties. So 1 in 4 children with mental health difficulties aren't experiencing appropriate intervention. And I think that's with what's so great about cooking in terms of in a school setting, which is mainly what I'm focusing at the moment, is working in schools, is that it's such a accessible intervention for children, because the idea of, I think for children who are particularly vulnerable or particularly distrusting of adults, the idea of sitting in a room for talking therapy or counselling is actually very intimidating. I think, and I'm by the way really for counselling and therapy for children, but I feel like they have to be ready. And cooking is like the perfect intervention for children who aren't ready for talking therapy, and also even for children with art therapy and drama therapy. Again, really, I've got I have friends who are art and drama therapists, and I really value it. But I think cooking is almost like the first port of call for children who haven't experienced any intervention, because it's really safe. The cooking is such a primal act, isn't it? We have to do it. Someone has to do it for you every day, and the conversations that we have around food. It's such a safe way to get children into therapeutic spaces, and then it can be a springboard into the deeper. When I say the deeper, more focused in on the child's individual needs. It's a really good springboard into those. I suppose that's really what Flourish Kitchen serves, is a kind of accessible intervention for children who have social and emotional difficulties, and then can be a springboard into other services.
Brilliant. So food is very empowering, cooking, very empowering skill to have.
Exactly. And I think if we can get the children excited and interested in cooking when they're young, then you can only hope that then they have that seed within them, and it can grow, and they can have a lifelong interest in cooking, eating, making food choices.
So what would you say are some of the main skills that you gained from working in charities and community groups that you've brought with you to the Flourish Kitchen?
Yeah, main skills, I would say, in terms of working in the charity sector, I think it gave me probably confidence in terms of knowing all the different the team around the child. So even just knowing what the difference between all the different type of therapies there are, therapies, and also the kind of safeguarding policies, the current legislation, children's rights, giving me a real sense of the system that a child is born into, I suppose. So I think working in a charity has really equipped me with knowing who to refer children on to, who to contact if I'm noticing a need in the room, whether it's noticing a delay like motor skill development. I would know that for something like that, it could be an occupational therapist could be really helpful, or take it to the Senko. Yeah, so I think working in a charity, especially I've worked at quite large charities, I think it gave me quite a good sense of the world outside of the kitchen, and also having a pool of different other professionals I can tap into for support.
Yeah, of course. So you gather your network.
Yeah.
So what are some of the main challenges that you face in your work?
Well, the main challenge at the moment is that the pandemic, so not being able to go into schools. Yeah, the more that Flourish Kitchen has been going on, has evolving, I've realised that therapeutic cooking really is it's everything to do with food. It's talking about food, using food as icebreakers, using food to be creative, writing stories about cooking. Last week we were doing an imaginary menu with a child I mentor, how her dream menu would be. It got very creative. We for the first lockdown at the secondary school I was working in Brixton, we were doing YouTube videos, and one of them, which you can access, I think it's on my website, which is Dress a Table Challenge, where I did a little animation of laying a table with found objects from my house. So I used socks for napkins, I used a bed sheet for a tablecloth, and then found objects. Like it was sometimes I put flowers from the park, just kind of showing that the fun ways of dressing a table can be. And then we shared, what other videos did we do? Which I think is on my website as well, is sharing cooking with dandelions. So being able to go to the park and fry up some dandelions. So we've had to just find creative ways to keep the therapeutic cooking approach going during the pandemic without being able to be with them physically, which has been a real challenge, because I feel like these kids really need the as I kind of mentioned at the beginning, being in their bodies and having that physical presence, being in the same presence. There is something missing, but as all of us have had to, particularly, I've seen all amazing stuff Holistic Kitchen Academy are doing. We have to adapt, don't we, and find the opportunities within what we've got. So flexibility, I suppose, would be the main thing that I've learned from this challenge.
That sounds wonderful. The working with the dandelions from the park and everything. So, you know, it is so inspiring listening to you, Susie, and the breadth of your work as well, all of the different things you can offer. So how do people get to work with you? Do you just work through schools, or can people directly get in touch?
Yeah, people can take referrals from schools and privately. So we do one-to-one work and group work in schools. I even do some one-to-one work in schools as well. So the best way is through my website. Yeah, you can contact me directly on there, or drop me an email. What is my email address? Is info@theflourishkitchen.co.uk.
info@theflourishkitchen.co.uk. Brilliant.
Yeah.
And finally, Susie, do you have a top tip for engaging kids in the kitchen to share with our listeners?
Yes, I suppose my top tip would be related to what I just mentioned, actually, which is to incorporate rituals into your cooking process. So pay just as much time to the laying, or as they say in France, dressing of the table, as you have as equal amount of time to that as the cooking. Children love the putting flowers on the table, doing place names, doing a menu. Just make it as ritualistic and fun and playful, and you'll really reap the rewards from that, like you both will, you and the child. Yeah.
Wow. So you're setting the scene, and this is what I love about so much of what you've said today, Susie, is you're focusing on setting the scene, the rituals that goes into it, the way that the food gets prepared, the magic that happens in all of that, and then the food kind of takes care of itself from there.
Exactly. Because I'm personally really passionate about nutrition and eating food, well sourced and seasonal food. That's my personal passion, and it's not that's not an interest. It's that I feel the entry into getting to all of that stuff is getting kids in the kitchen first.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Susie. Just such an inspiring guest, and thank you so much for being our first guest on these North and Chick podcasts. You're perfect for what we really want to present, this whole concept of nourishing the community. I can't think of anybody who does that as well as you do.
Thanks, Susie. What I love is just the playfulness, the creativity, the fun, spontaneity, that whole kind of thing about it. It's not pressured or kind of rigid around recipes and this strict food education. It's something else, isn't it, that you do? And this playfulness, this fun, it keeps coming up. You keep using those words, and I think it's magic.
Yeah, I feel like symbolically, the getting rid of the recipes is really key. Even if you do have a little recipe on the side, but for the kids to not have to look at a recipe and to be able to have an experience of feeling their way through things. And if they make mistakes, doesn't matter, you can try again. They're like feeling your way through it, and throwing the recipe out for a while I feel it's very symbolic of the process, and I feel it's very in keeping with both of your approach. It's the feeling, it's the connecting in, the presence and togetherness.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Thank you, Susie. Thank you so much.
Thanks, ladies.
Brilliant. Thank you. Well, that was amazing, and such a great tip about how to engage kids in the kitchen. Hayley, I know you've worked with a lot of young people too. So what kind of recipe or loose recipe always goes down well? What would you recommend?
Well, before I get to the recipe, one thing I want to resonate with is what Susie said about the laying of the table. And the recipe I'm going to share came from when I was working in Liverpool with young people in residential care. And along with the food, one of the most important parts of the whole mealtime process was the laying of the table. So I love that Susie brought that up. It's so symbolic, having that, setting that table, putting the little details on it that you want to put on it, and it engages the kids so much more deeply with the food itself. So whilst I was working in Liverpool, I tried to always cook familiar favourites with the kids, using a healthy twist that would use fresh, natural, whole food ingredients, all prepared from scratch. And once they challenged me to make a Chinese takeaway, but to make it healthy and tasty. And it had to resemble their favourite takeout. So one of the dishes that we made was chicken sweet corn soup. And it was in summer, so we had fresh corn kernels and we boiled them, cooked them and took off all of the individual kernels, pureed half of them, kept half of them whole. We used a freshly made organic chicken stock, garlic, ginger, some sesame oil, and then topped the soup when it was finished with shredded chicken and the other sweet corn kernels on the top. And it came out a winner. And I tell you, after that healthy Chinese takeaway, I'd won their trust, and that was their standout dish. So we've had a tip from Susie. You've had a recipe tip from me. Kirsten, do you have a nutrition tip that we can finish with?
Yes, actually, I was thinking about tips to keep kids alert, engaged and focused. And my top tip for that is to have a little bit of protein at breakfast time. This seems to help keep blood sugar stable and so help with things like concentration and also keeping moods more balanced throughout the day. Now, I know a lot of teens in particular skip breakfast or sleep through it. So I'd encourage at the very least, maybe a handful of nuts or seeds, or a very basic protein shake on waking. Now, do check the ingredients list on your protein shakes. Make sure there's not loads of added sugar and sweeteners and preservatives and other nonsense that doesn't need to be there. Now, for kids that do get involved with breakfast, maybe some eggs or a Bircher muesli where you've got oats, nuts, seeds, maybe a little bit of dried fruit, grated apple or grated carrot even, and you soak that overnight in a little bit of water and a little bit of yogurt, and that's just a really lovely protein rich delicious breakfast. Or if they're cereal junkies and you can't get them off the cereals, then add some protein like some yogurt or get that sugar-free protein shake again and just give them a glass of that to go with it. So there you go.
Thanks for that, Kirsten. So that rounds up our first ever North and Chick podcast. Thank you to our guest, Susie Cunningham, and thank you to you for listening. We have a long list of wonderful guests lined up for you who all nourish their communities in inspiring ways. So please keep tuning in. And in the meantime, have a very lovely day. So if you enjoyed that, please subscribe to our North and Chick podcast. And also follow us on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter as North and Chick, all lowercase, no spaces.